Once again, welcome to my channel. This is Karthik. Today we focus on user-defined exceptions, which is very important concept in exceptions. So, if you did not have an idea about exceptions, just try to watch my earlier videos of exception concept, then you can understand this concept user-defined exception. So user-defined exceptions. User-defined exceptions are the exceptions which are created by the user and which are declared by the user and which are called by the users. Why we need user-defined exceptions? User-defined exceptions are required in situations where we are unaware of handling a particular logic with which kind of inbuilt exceptions. Sometimes all inbuilt exceptions may not be required to handle exceptions. At the time we should need an exception which is done by the user, and that exceptions can be created and that can be handled. So user-defined exceptions are very handy in situations where you are trying to work with the real-time applications. Example, say that when you're working with an banking application, say where you need to send a regular notifications to the customer saying that your account is having some amount of something, say rupees, say 50,000, and sometimes it may say that due of paying amount towards finance, and you may get some message say balance is very less, so kindly refill, so far and so forth. There are different kinds of notifications or the exceptions which we experience in situations where we work with different real-time applications. So these kind of messages or notifications to be sent to the user in a form of exceptions. So how to create an exception as a user-defined exception? So to go with this, first we need to understand the exception hierarchy. In the earlier videos, we already discussed about exception hierarchy. Exception hierarchy starts from the throwable class towards an exception class and followed by all exceptions. There may be the combinations of say a runtime exception or compile time exception or any kind of exceptions which are all exceptions. Here the injunction of all exceptions means that the exceptions can be compile exceptions or runtime exceptions or user defined exceptions. So any exceptions which you create will be the subclass of exception class. Every exception what you create or what you use is in the subclass. I can say exception is a parent class of all exceptions. If you want, you just see here java p space java dot lang dot example, take an arithmetic exception. It is a subclass of which exception is, see, it is a subclass of runtime exception, and again check what is the parent class of runtime exception. Runtime exception is again a child of exception class. You can even take different exceptions. Say if you take an exception, say a compile time exception, say take IO exception, java dot IO exception, and IO exception is also a subclass of exception. And if you observe that every exception has the same kind of constructor. See, a constructor having no parameter here, a constructor having a string parameter, a constructor having string and throwable. It's like we say constructor having no parameter, string parameter. If you see the earlier video, I have said the example of throw arithmetic exception where I have thrown arithmetic exception by passing a string value. So where all these things are originated is who is the parent of exception. You just see Again, what is the parent of exception? So java.lang.exception. Fortunately, that is the throwable class. So throwable is an parent of all exceptions. The throwable is a parent which contains every constructor. See here, exception class. If you see the throwable class, you could find all the methods of exception. See, a throwable class contains constructors. It contains a method called getMessage. It contains a method called, say, a print stack trace. Print stack trace is a method which is used to get a message from the stack. getMessage, message from the exception. ToString converts the exception into string, and you have different things. You can have getCause, getReason. See, getCause is a method, the cause for the reason of exception. So this is a parent class of all exceptions, even exception also. So why I am showing this, because now I try to create a user-defined exception that will call the parent class exception called exception. Okay, because when I pass an parent class exception, a message says string, this string should be accessed by the any subclass using a method called getMessage. Okay, so straight away we go with an example for user-defined exceptions. So user-defined exceptions are the exceptions which created by user. To take simple example, say something, an account contains some amount, say notepad space something, say bank dot java. Very simple example. So class bank and public static void main string args. Okay, this is an example. Now for this example, I just create a class name as balance less exception. This is exception nowhere find in our exception hierarchy. This is my exception, balance less exception, or sometimes I can say that insufficient funds exception. So insufficient funds exception. So in order to make this particular class as exception, I should need to extend with exception class. So exception is a class, is a parent class, and it is extended with an child class. This class will get the complete features of this exception. Whenever I create an exception, that exception should have some kind of a message to be accessed by the class. So straight away I create a constructor here. So I just copy this and public constructor. To this I pass a message called string msg. And why I created this, because this is a constructor already available in the exception class also. If you want, you just watch this. See, there is a kind of constructor available here which is exception constructor having its string. The same constructor I am reusing in my class, that is public constructor having the string message. Now what I do is that I'll try to pass the message to the superclass. I am saying I just want to pass this message to super of msg. The meaning of this is this message will be passed to the super of msg. This is called as superclass constructor. People, if you want to understand this concept, you should need to work with my super keyword of inheritance concept in my earlier videos. So string msg. So this message I need to pass to super of msg. Why I am passing to super of msg? The reason behind that is super of msg is what? Superclass. This is superclass, and superclass has a string here. I am passing this message to this string. Then again this exception again pass the same message to Throwable. Once again see the Throwable class here. Again the same kind of string is already available even in the exception class. It available even in the Throwable class. Means this message will be passed to this class, and this class will pass this message to Throwable class. Why we need all these things to be done? Because Throwable is a class which contains a method called getMessage. So to get a message for this particular class called insufficient fund exception, this message need to be pushed to the superclass. The superclass of this class is exception. I have pushed this message to the superclass, and this superclass will also push the message to where? Throwable. Since Throwable is a class contains a method called getMessage. You will understand now when I write the program. So my class is done. Just go to main method here. Just create a main. In main method, you just create a double, say, balance. Just create a method if possible. A method saying that public void debit. I want to debit an amount from the account. So to debit the data, I just try to create a balance here, static double balance amount equals to say 23,789.45, and I also create this method as static method to make it comfort. Now I just want to call this method to debit the amount. So when I want to debit the amount, I have to keep a condition saying that if the amount is less than the balance amount, if the amount is less than the balance amount, then I can say it as balance underscore amount equals to balance underscore amount minus amount, and simply print system dot out dot print line of balance is balance amount I am printing. If the amount what I am requesting to get is greater than the balance amount, then there comes a problem, that is else part. Hence go to else part, and I should need to call an exception saying that an insufficient funds exception. So just create object for this saying that insufficient funds exception space IFE equals to new insufficient funds exception, and we have a constructor here having what? String message. Now try to pass a message here. I just create a message here as balance is very less, so please refill. I just create a message say balance is very less, please refill. Done. Once it is done, I just say here a keyword, say throw IFE. We already see this concept in earlier video. So throw IFE, throw is a keyword which will throw this object forcibly. Whenever I say throw, this automatically throw this exception. This else part will run when the balance amount is less than the amount which I am expecting. So hence this is a method I should need to call now. So from the main method, just call the method saying that debit of say a value. Example, I just want to pass the data from the command argument. So double dot, I say pass double of args of 0. I want to pass the amount from the command line argument. So I am saying directly debit, because debit is a static method. I am accessing from a static main. I can even say as bank dot debit, both the same. Bank dot debit of double dot passed up. Why I am saying this because I want to take input from command line arguments. So command argument is of string type. I'll convert that into double type. Done. Run the program. So Java C space bank.java. There is some error here. Very good. It shows me an error saying that unreported exception. That is what? Insufficient funds exception. I should need to throw this exception. Okay. To throw this exception, what I have to do towards my method, I can throw, saying throws keyword, and the exception name is what? Insufficient funds exception. This is the way how to throw. This is the best example which includes throws keyword as well as throw keyword. So when I get a compilation error, I need to throw the exception at the time of the method. I already said we need to propagate the exception. So the same exception is to be again copied and kept here, the main method. If you don't keep this, again you get the same error. Okay. Now we just try to compile a program again. Now error will not be seen. So Java space bank. See, we got an exception. First error index out of bounds because I did not pass the amount which I want to get. So I want to get 25,000 rupees. See, I got immediately exception saying that exception thread main, insufficient funds exception, balance is very less, please refill. Please refill. If you give the amount less than that, say example 21,000, see, we get the balance is 2,789 rupees because I have taken 21,000 rupees. So this is when I use something like throws keyword. When I use throws keyword, I cannot expect only message. Generally, if you want to expect the message balance is very less, only message if you want to get instead of all these uneven messages, say complete stack of exception, then you should need to use a try catch block better instead of throws keyword. Instead of throws keyword, remove this and use a try catch block here. Okay, like I just say a try catch block. So here itself in if condition. So a try, and after else catch. Inside this, I am saying insufficient funds exception, and inside this insufficient funds exception, I just print here system dot out dot print line IFE dot get message. Now the message can be printed because this message is passed to the superclass exception. This exception is passing through the superclass called Throwable, and this Throwable class has a method called getMessage. That is a method I have used here. So which message I want? IFE dot getMessage. Now save this and compile now. Now run this. See, I got only message balance is very less, please refill. Earlier I got the complete stack of the exception saying that exception thread main, insufficient funds exception, balance is very less, please refill, exception is at bank dot debit method at line some 16 example. Instead of getting all the stuff, a simple message can easily convey to the users that the balance is very less. This is the best example which contains all the things. Say it contains a try catch block, it contains a throw keyword. If you want to do something, you can even keep here throws keyword. Example, you can keep throws keyword even here. It doesn't mind anything. The best example which contains throws keyword it contains a try catch block, it contains throw keyword. If you want to even keep something like a finally keyword here, saying that finally, say example, a simple message again to the customer after printing that your account will deactivate after 4 days if that account is with empty amount. Okay, so if you run it again, you can see this same kind of stuff. See, balance is very less, please refill. Your account will deactivate after 4 days. So a best example to illustrate about throws keyword, and also try catch finally block. Okay.